It has been almost 1,000 years since the Treaty of Scales and Feathers that ended the war that shook the heavens, split the earth, and created the desert that I call home. After the treaty between the Apex clans answering to the Dragons and Phoenix respectively, the Phoenix clan began a kingdom in the west called Haven, and the Dragons a kingdom in the east called Pious, each taking on weaker clans as their tamelings or servants. Regardless of their differences, the clans of Feather and Scale agreed on one thing. They hated the fur-bearing clans known as Beasts of the Field, and referred to them all as lessers, a name predatory clans gave to their prey. To the far west there is an ocean full of islands. The western coast is dominated by a civilization of ruthless pirates, constant seekers of treasure, adventure, and above all freedom. To the north lays a vast frozen mountain range that spans the entire continent. It is mostly a barren wasteland, with the exception of small villages and settlements along the frost line. To the south there is a forest booming with merchants, and to the east a large freshwater reservoir and rolling hills that give way to a high mountain in the north, and an empty vast ocean to the east. The people of this world are shapeshifters, able to change at will from human form into the beasts of the clan that we are born to. My name is Xion. I am a member of the Desert Fox clan. My father was a pirate from the west coast. He was killed some time ago for stealing from the Desert Wolf clan, leaving my mother and I to fend for ourselves. My mother is a strange fox from the east, with flowing black hair and deep purple eyes. We are outcasts even among our people, the thieving fox clan of the desert, not to be trusted even among ourselves. It is my dream that all of this will change someday, and that I will become a better man than my father. Xion could feel the warmth of the desert sand on his back, warmed by the day long gone. He lay flat, looking up at the stars with Bonnie in a rare moment of peace, contemplating his future as he gazed into oceans of blues, purples, and twinkling whites that made up the night sky. Both moons were in their dark phase, and it was nights like these that Xion loved the most. It was easy to stay hidden, and the stars seemed to dance and shimmer like flames of loved ones long gone. He liked to imagine that one of those twinkling lights was his father. Suddenly his face was covered with sand. He sprang up in surprise as Bonnie giggled. She had been propped up on her elbow watching him space out in absolute admiration. After all, he was not hard to look at. His wispy silver hair and beautiful green eyes, like fields of clover. "What are you thinking about?" she said, smiling as Xion shook the sand from his hair. "Just thinking of what it must be like to be a star," Xion replied. "A star? Why would you want to be a star?" Bonnie replied as she sat up and crossed her legs. "Well, they guide people at night and light up the world when the moons are dark. But they are so far away," Bonnie said as she crawled toward him. "Another perk of being a star," Xion replied as Bonnie jumped on top of him, pinning him to the desert floor. She leaned in until the tip of her nose was touching his, and whispered in a playfully pitiful tone as her maroon locks fell on his face. "They are so far from me. Would you trade a night with me for a night as a star?" "Not even if I had 1,000 lifetimes," Xion replied as he met her with a deep kiss. After a few more moments on the desert floor, the two of them found themselves once again laying on their backs, sweating heavily and out of breath. "I think you smell enough like me now to pass as a rabbit," Bonnie said, giggling to herself again. "You think they'll hate me, your family?" Xion panted. "No, because we are going to introduce you as Xion the Rabbit, a bounty hunter from the north, remember, as opposed to Xion the bloodthirsty fox." Xion mused as he raised his eyebrow and smiled. "Exactly," Bonnie replied matter-of-factly. "My father would kill me if he knew I led a fox to the Grand Burrow, much less invited him to eat dinner with us. Speaking of, we really should get going. Are you coming, Xion?" Bonnie asked as she bent down and dusted the sand away, revealing a small hole in the ground. She changed into a rabbit and disappeared inside the hole. "Yes, Bunny," Xion replied as he changed into a fox and followed behind her. "What have I told you about calling me that?" The maroon rabbits corned as she resealed the tunnel behind them and turned to begin their descent. You would not want me to call your mother Vixen when I meet her now, would you? It is a great insult to call a rabbit bunny. I am sorry, Bonnie. Xion replied. It is all right, my love. It is hard to learn the culture of your food. I understand. You know I would never eat you. You are not food. Xion replied, feeling a little hurt at the suggestion. Are you sure your father wants to meet me? He said he did, but he does not know you are a fox. Bonnie replied as she looked nervously left then right. They had come out of the hole into a large dimly lit corridor and changed back to their human forms. So I am to meet your father man to man and hope he does not notice the differences in the two of us. It's not just my father. I worry my brothers may sniff you out. Bonnie replied as they walked along the underground maze that was the grand burrow of the desert rabbits, bustling with rabbits wandering to and fro. They took a left then a right through winding corridor after corridor until they found their destination, Bonnie's home. A small wooden door in the side of one of the many tunnels. Bonnie, you are home. A female rabbit squealed as she opened the door and wrapped her arms around Bonnie. And you must be Xion. The rabbit greeted him with a smirk as he walked through the door and began looking from Bonnie to the stranger and back again with a look of confusion. I'm Connie, Bonnie's older sister. The stranger said, introducing herself. We are twins. Bonnie said with a giggle as she hugged her sister, and they both looked at Xion. Despite their similarities, Xion could tell the difference. With his eyes he could read Connie, see that she knew the truth, and feel her fear, something he had never been able to do with Bonnie. Not since their first encounter, when what he saw in Bonnie's eyes floored him and he fell in love. All his life he could read the thoughts and feeling of everyone around him, but not her. Ah, but I was here first, dear sister. Connie replied, breaking Xion's train of thought. According to Dad, who can barely tell us apart now, much less when we were little. Bonnie replied. Good point. Speaking of Dad, he is waiting for us. Connie said as she turned to lead them in. They were led into a small round room with a large table. Around it sat 7 rabbits, with a man Xion guessed was Bonnie's father at the head of the table. Bonnie, can I see you in the kitchen for a moment? Connie asked as Xion took a seat at the opposite end of the table. The 2 girls walked into the kitchen, and Connie put her arm around Bonnie's neck and leaned her over in a huddle. He really is the fox you talk about all the time, isn't he? She whispered, unable to believe her little sister had brought a fox to the dinner table. Yes, Bonnie replied as she grinned and blushed. The look of excitement fled from Connie's face. That means you had to use dark magic. Bonnie, who did you go to? What did you promise them? Connie asked, her eyes now wide with terror. Nothing. Bonnie replied as her girlish glow vanished. Who was it? And what did you promise them? Connie asked again as Bonnie turned to leave. Connie grabbed her sister by the shoulders and spun her around, giving her a stern look. It was the Snake Clan. Bonnie replied as she turned away in shame. I promised them the location of the Grand Burrow, but I will never give it to them, and after tonight I will be protected by the fox from the east, so I will not have to worry about the snakes or anyone. He is the son of that monster. Connie exclaimed. Yes, Bonnie replied. And I have not told him about the deal yet, so do not tell him, father, or your murderous boyfriend. Connie asked as they went to leave the kitchen. Both Bonnie said as they re-entered the dining room. So Bonnie tells me you were a tracker, odd job for a rabbit. Bonnie's father said as he sat at the end of the table eyeing Xion. What kind of rabbit did you say you were exactly? You are not like any desert hare I have ever seen. Her little brother Jack questioned as he began to nibble a root vegetable. Bonnie looked at Xion with a bit of concern, but Xion was prepared and told half the truth. My father was a hare from the northern mountain, he began. I was born there, and we came to the desert as trackers. Snow hares have an excellent sense of smell. Helps us avoid hunters in the cold. Or in my case, track people down. Dad, Bonnie said as she stood behind her chair gripping it nervously. Xion could feel her tension, see it in her body language. This was it. Bonnie had changed her mind. She couldn't keep up the ruse anymore. Not with the way everything was about to change. Everyone, Xion is not a hare. He is a fox. There was a moment of silence, and everyone in the room stood frozen as if they believed her. Then her father began to laugh. A fox? Like the imaginary friend from your childhood, he said, breaking the tension. He was not imaginary. This is Xion of the Desert Fox clan. Bonnie demanded as she stomped her foot childishly, then caught herself and regained her composure. Please, Daddy, don't be angry, she pleaded. Come on now, boy, what is the joke? Bonnie's father asked as he turned his attention, still half grinning, to Xion, who dropped his cloak, revealing his tail, and then raised his fox ears. There was a huge shuffle as everyone scrambled to get across the room. Bonnie's brothers and sisters gathered behind their father, who pulled a small saber and pointed it at Xion, then turned his attention from him to Bonnie, and then back to the monster she had brought home. You brought a fox here to the Grand Burrow, he yelled in a fit of rage, his saber hand shaking. Father, please. Bonnie began, but her father cut her off. You have doomed us all. Father, he does not hunt rabbits. Bonnie replied, I have not since the day I met your daughter. Xion pleaded as the younger children slid quietly from the room, and the older children stayed, grabbing anything they could to help defend their father. Oh really? What if he is lying, and it is a trick to find the Grand Burrow? Or even if it is truth, what if his family follows him here? Bonnie, he is a fox. Father, please hear them out. Connie pleaded. You. He yelled at Connie. You knew. Bonnie looked at her father, and then to Xion, and as she turned her head, her knees began to shake, and her legs gave way, causing her to change form. Bonnie, Xion shouted as he rushed to catch her. She landed in his arms, and he realized she had begun to smell sick. Get away from her, fox. You did this to her. Jack commanded as he made a move toward them. Xion turned and locked eyes with him, freezing Jack in place. Something is wrong. I have to take her to my mother. She is gifted in the dark arts, and she can help her. Jack began to speak, but his father cut him off. Go. Leave here and take my traitorous daughter with you. Xion growled at Bonnie's father, but saw in his eyes this was a hard decision for him. Letting Xion go meant possibly exposing the Grand Burrow, but killing him meant condemning his daughter, and in the end he could not do it. So he lowered his saber. Bonnie whimpered in pain, and Xion broke his gaze, turning his attention back to her. He gently scooped her up into his arms, donned the cloak once more, and took his leave. It was difficult, getting back out of the Grand Burrow without a guide. Xion got turned around once or twice in the winding tunnels, his mind racing as Bonnie writhed in his arms. Once he found his way back to the surface and the familiar desert sand, he ran as fast as he could to reach the home of his clan, taking great care not to alert the other fox to Bonnie's presence. Mother! Xion cried as he reached his den. Mother, please help her. I think she's been hexed. Xion's mother Lulu calmly looked the rabbit over, and as her eyes met Bonnie's, Bonnie began to change form again, and Lulu peered into her heart. Son, this woman is your lover. Yes, mother, please. Xion pleaded. I will help her. Lulu replied, still remarkably calm. But Xion, you must get something for me. Lulu drew a circle in the sand, and the sand inside the circle turned into a black pool. The shadows cast by the candle light all converged on the circle as if they were water being pulled into some deep hole. There is a realm on the other side of this circle. In that realm lies the power to save her. Xion hesitated for a moment, trying to read Lulu, but she was blank, like she was hiding something from him. You have to go now, hurry, Lulu commanded. Xion kissed Bonnie one last time and did as his mother asked. He changed into a fox and dove into the black sand, and it swallowed him whole. Where is he? Lulu asked as she turned to Bonnie in a rush. What? Bonnie replied, slightly delusional with fever. Xion may not be able to read you, but I can. You made a deal with the serpents, and you went back on it. Now their curse is killing you. Where is my grandson? If you die and he is left alone, he will starve. Bonnie turned and mumbled in Lulu's arms, a small burrow 10 miles west of the Scorpions' village. There was a silence, and then Bonnie in her delusion looked deep into Lulu's eyes. "Can you help me, Mom? Please make the pain stop." A tear came to Lulu. Now in Bonnie's delusion, she saw Lulu as her dead mother. "Yes." Lulu replied, "Everything is going to be all right now." She stroked Bonnie's hair softly and looked away as she snapped Bonnie's neck. Lulu traveled all night to find the burrow Bonnie spoke of. As she entered, she could hear the cry of an infant. Then she found him in a bed of grass. A little fox pup with maroon hair and his father's eyes. "I will call you Oliver," Lulu said as she picked up the pup and rocked him in her arms. "I am sorry I could not save your mother, little one, but maybe your father will save us all." Xion found himself in sheer darkness and almost unnatural pitch black. "Come to me," a female voice called out from within the abyss. Xion could not see, so he followed the sound of the voice. There was a scarlet flash from up above, and what Xion saw chilled him to the bone, almost driving him mad. As he looked away, he caught an image of a thin, pale woman with long black hair covering the ground around her shoulders before the room went dark. She was lying on the ground, pinned down with a silver sword protruding from her chest. He ran as fast as he could to reach her before the complete darkness engulfed them again, fearing that if he did not reach her in time, he may be lost alone in the darkness forever. "Do not look up, little fox," the woman called out. "What was that?" Xion asked as he stared at the woman. "My creation, I am afraid. A world gone by, destroyed by my hand. You call it the Never." She paused as she sat up on her forearms, the sword grinding against her ribcage, and continued staring up at the sky. "We are in its depths. Why? Who are you? How did you get here?" Xion's mind was racing now, captivated by this woman and her fearlessness. More than that, it was like she was completely detached, as if the madness around them were as mundane as watching sand be blown by the wind. "My name is Agatha, and to you I am a goddess. I was sealed here by your creator, with this sword pushed through my chest and into the ground, forced to watch the consequence of what I have done for eons." She paused again and tilted her head as she turned her gaze to Xion. "The question is, why are you here, little fox?" Xion thought of her words for a moment, and then before he could speak, she answered herself. "You want to change your world as I changed mine. You want power." "Yes," Xion blurted out. "I want to save my lover Bonnie. But more than that, I want to create a world where we can be together without fear." Xion did not understand what compelled him to spew his desires to this strange woman, nor what compelled him forward. Agatha grinned as her soft white cheeks gained a pinkish glow about them. "This sword that binds me has the power you seek, the power of creation itself." Xion's eyes shifted their gaze from Agatha's pale face and her bottomless dark eyes to the sword protruding from her chest. Could it be that simple? A sword granting him the power to change the world. "Free me and your wish will be granted," Agatha insisted. "What will you do once you are free?" Xion asked hesitantly, his eyes searching the darkness. "My power has dwindled during my time here. I am afraid I am only a shadow of my former self. If you release me, I will leave this place and nothing more." As Xion put his hand on the hilt of the sword, he could feel its power race up his arm. It struck his heart and spread through him like red-hot lightning. Then he looked through the darkness and into Agatha's eyes. He tried to read her the way his mother had taught him, to discern the intentions of another, but he felt as if he were looking into his own soul. Agatha began to plead once more, but before she could speak, Xion pulled the sword from her chest. He looked down and squinted in the darkness to inspect the silhouette of the long, slender blade in his hand. Then he looked up and Agatha was gone. He was alone in the all-encompassing silence and black of the depths. "Have you left me here to die?" Xion called out to the darkness angrily as the sky flashed a dull crimson once more. "No, silly. I just wanted to enjoy being upright for a moment," Agatha said from behind Xion. He felt her breath on the back of his neck, and it made his hair stand on end as she floated over and rested her arms on his shoulders. Xion whirled around as a chill ran up his spine, and the crimson light flashed once more, revealing Agatha floating with a grin on her face. "Shall we leave here now together, you and I?" she said with an outstretched hand. Xion raised the sword to her throat, not sure why he was so afraid of her. "Yes," he replied as he lowered his blade. Agatha raised her palm and closed her dainty fingers, and Xion found himself standing in the desert alone beneath the midnight sky.